So we had, I think, quite a kaleidoscopic exploration of what the blockchain, what Bitcoin and other kinds of approaches could mean. I'm sure you have some. There were actually, I thought, not that many questions after each presentation. Sometimes that's the result of many questions. Could that be? I'm sure you have some now, Jan. So, or if you want to come with a statement, that could be good too.
I have a question for the last talk. You. No, it was really interesting talk, but my question is, do you think that for managing democracy, blockchain is enough? I mean that today, what we know, what we speak about, is a linear blockchain. Talk, step. Well, okay. Let's just imagine that we are not local, but Europe, US, China is really not manageable. About the number of interaction between people in one day and multiply by the number of people. So we wait. There are solutions. It's not 1D dimension blockchain, but 2D, 3D, maybe 4D. We need to add the term 4D. And you have to know that speaking about research and the concepts, we are not there today at all. It's very difficult to manage 1D blockchain because there are delays, you need consensus and so on. But 2D, 3D, 4D. Okay, so it's my question.
What's 2D, 3D, 4D? Is that layers? Is that
what I mean that we need parallel blockchain and in the same process to coordinate it. Think about it. Okay, maybe I am not saying there are no solution, but we are not speaking here about that.
I try to simplify. I don't deal well with 3D, neither with colors. Actually, just work with text and black and white. But I think to simplify it, it could be also framed into like a bottom-up or top-down process. Mm-hmm. So where do we start from is with the biggest phenomenon of any blockchain manifested like Bitcoin. It was really a bottom-up process that then it's becoming or is trying to be like some ministers are trying to make it become like a top-down. Mm-hmm. And the bottom-up is a very important, it's a conscious social act that a honester should be doing. That's why I love, for instance, Roland's project, which is really intensively engaged community before even thinking about doing something technical. This is a very important thing. And I think that even like what I would like to table, what I'm interested in into this conversation is to understand more what, for instance, here in Brussels, like to start bottom up, like where are we, what is the situation, what this brings really good to this city, this scene that is gathered here, what can we bring home from such a debate? And I think to start a bottom-up approach would be to map, to start a mapping of real, communities around this city that are actually building constituencies that can benefit perhaps, from a technological deployment which is more advanced. First of all, to understand what constituencies are. Because when we build a network of values, we need to understand how these values interface with each other. And I'm talking about something very concrete, a fantastic squad producing, like fixing bicycles on one of the town, and another collective which is perhaps self-organized among renters that is producing basic income on the other side. And on the other side, punk concerts are being done, and perhaps some other things I don't like to think of, which are too corporate for argument or to articulate. But basically, how do we network these values? And the mapping effort is a very important effort to do, and starting, like from what can be improved, like the presence of more reality on Brussels here that could, bring forward their experience, and how do they interface the
Okay, thank you. I have another question, and after that I stop. And it's for you. You spoke about social proof of work. Very nice concept. I am not saying. As you know, in Bitcoin, there are two goals for proof of work. The first one is some of lottery to decide in general, what is the next miner to sanctify, to put the public hash, is one thing. The other goal, so there are two goals, maybe the other ones, but simplify. And the other goals is to avoid what we call computer science, the Sybil attack. It means, in few words, to avoid clones, avatars, and so on. And I am not sure that I understand what you are saying for the two directions. I mean that I understand very well against the so-called attack, but for the other part, maybe we have to explain.
It's very far from any computationalist description. It's basically the admission that don't need to rely on machines necessarily to reach consensus. And this breaks perhaps the fundamental value proposition of most anarcho-capitalists out there who are keen of living with a shotgun and 4 dogs out of their door because they don't believe in society. Well, the social proof of work is for people that do believe in society. Do believe that society is even better than community, or to articulate from Gesellschaft, and that we want to live into this sort of uncertainty yet of handling, of negotiating trust, but still in a place of and real freedom is not done by isolation. Real freedom is done by possible travel to cross communities, to not be always the same persons perceived by others as you are everywhere. And this means also that a machine cannot tell you who you are and how much you own. The actual communities you're with, the societies you're in touch with. So it's definitely a breakout of the computationalism. So basically we bring back the conflict. We want conflict to be on the table. We want the conflict to be represented, to reach consensus. We want people to meet and talk over their problems and understand who they think deserves the miners with the most blocks mined, because that is a social process.
On what you say, I think something interesting in this field is, of course, it was built on libertarian view, and there is a lot of that culture in Bitcoin, and a lot of people coming from that background in it. But it's not only that; it's also like it's already in tension. Like the full networks is beauty, and it all relies not on ideology, but only on the conflicts of interest of all the actors. So one of the most interesting project itself is it by itself like one community, which is global, but linked by opposing interests that makes it work. On what you said about the technical limitation, so just to come back, one main problem that Bitcoin and Ethereum have is that the blockchain is really getting big and it's quite slow. So each time somebody makes a transaction, it's adding to the global chain and it's getting huge. Currently like 80 gigabytes, so it's quite big for any device, and especially for phones. But currently there are a lot of work on that field. So one idea is to keep one main chain and have small chains that does all action, and just you come back on the main chain to validate some interaction. Another one that is a bit more disruptive is to imagine that you don't have one chain of blocks, but you have like threads of blocks. So they go in different, and then at some point they reunite, and you have a full chain. And you don't need to have the full chain of all the word transaction. But that's just a technicality. The important part of that is that currently it's just one experiment, the Bitcoin, just one software that works with one community, and currently so far this is also an experiment. So that gives you an idea of like how far we are from that becoming a huge change. Like currently, even technically, it's quite limited in what we could do, and especially if we are imagining any kind of adoption, that we are far from that.
We need more experiments and more research in validation mechanisms. Maybe conventional, maybe not only proof of work. There has been not many other blockchain technologies who tried differently. And proof of stake or proof of cooperation, they're still in the infancy. And we need to continue to develop and think about how can we, also as science people, and we need a lot of mathematical thoughts and lemmatas, thinking ahead to build a trustlessness mechanics for future-proof proof mechanism. But here, I question myself, do we really want to have faithlessness? So let the group who is deciding about the algorithm, being those who are then finally say, that's it, there's no more human control. There's still this thing up here. So how much human control do we want to have, at what point? And is it only the update, which we are 51% of the users, that we can gain another level of further development in the whole system? That's the current situation we have. So what are the small screws we would like to be able to use and change during the life cycle of a blockchain technology? This is still not yet answered. We are experimenting with Faircoin. I think we are on a good way. We have ideas about it, and it works, and we have consensus, and we believe that it works. But it needs a lot of feedback and involvement. We need to write more papers and academic discourse about it. Proof of cooperation with human interaction can look like.
I would like just to a bit on the same argument, and maybe you can provide some good answers on it. So the first thing is that after a paradigm shift in the global scientific paradigm that happened in the early 1910s, 1920s, a whole discipline of scientific discipline kind of disappeared. It was German, the Staatsrecht, so state theory. And to quote Douglas Rushkoff from the P2P conference in September, he argued that the generation that has been active in the 90s with the internet was the same generation that grew up through the 70s and the 80s anti-state kind of ideology. And we have spent an awful time conflicting with state. And we do things is that we kind of forgot what the state means. So just to give the definition, simply put in the wider sense, the state is an administered way of living together. So if we're going to juxtapose this position on technology and on the blockchain, to me, the libertarian paradox, and the contradiction, if you can say, is that while these people try to get away from regulation of the state, what they actually do with this determinism is that they actually encode the very regulation of the liberal state on the technology. So my question is, can we actually use the technology to shift the focus back on the normative perspective of how human society should work, rather than try to encode what we already have on the technology?
Okay, we have a question from the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to put an emphasis on the bottom-up approach that was put forward, and to really emphasize how much in Brussels specifically the social community is active, and how much it is developing in many different areas. And as Jaromil was mentioning, those things are getting actual basic online communication and mapping. So we have some maps that is available if you have any need for information, because actually one of the problems that I can see here is a complete lack of representation of any Brussels unity. So I would really like to hear them voice, and I really wonder how you can talk about social technology being representative of maybe 1/5 of the human population, and quite monochromatic. Goodbye.
I definitely think that that's a general problem in technology, how it's poorly represented. I feel like it was okay 2 years ago to say like, okay, there will be more men becoming engineers and more women, I don't know, working in more social fields. I think on the digital aspect, it's really becoming a problem, because it's not just a question of attribution of roles, genders. Like the digital technology are really becoming the base of the power in society. Like a lot of regulation are gonna go through that. A lot of these gonna go through that. Like it's gonna be like the basics of any company to have a lot of digital tools. So I definitely think that a really huge problem we have to solve, and the more we go in specialized technology, the increase the problem gets.
There is an interesting, just briefly, I think I spoke enough, but there is an interesting discrepancy. The digital often means disengagement. And with the excuse of being digital, you can save yourself from engage from the street. And this is being a clear failure for those parties that thought of themselves being like new generation, higher party, but they did not open a gazebo on the street to actually gather those signals, talk to those people, like face them and really be there. And it's similar, like the typical approach of, sorry to be like provoking, but sociologists, like they base their analysis on statistics, and basically numbers can be just like disengaging the subject, and you can just like basically map it out. And then you have another approach, which is the ethnographic approach, when we talk about mapping, the anthropological of like really engaging with the field and starting bottom up. And I think when I talk about bottom up, top down, it resonates with this sort of different approaches. You agree?
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm not expert at all, but I really like the idea of bringing back the conflict into the technology, and asking myself if it was possible not to be a Lannister, if I may explain it like that, a Lannister into the blockchain economy, or is it possible to erase debt into the blockchain economy? How do we manage if we agree on I imagine Wallonia, we all agree, or in Brussels, we all agree we use a certain kind of kind of currency, and then we have a problem together. Is it possible to implement into the code kind of coming back? Okay, we erased, we don't want the debt anymore, because you have made a parallel with the old time when we inscribed the debt on the tablet in rocks. But I know that this kind of tablets, we can break it. And I was asking myself, is it possible to break the blockchain to start again over? Or do we necessarily create a new blockchain to change me?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So basically, you can do a million different things with blockchain technology. So it's up to the rules you put in there. If you decide that the rules make that there is no way to do this or that, or it's possible to make this and that, that's what's in your technology. So it's really open. Somehow the question says something deep about money. It's like debt. What is debt? Start reading about it, then suddenly it gets a lot more complicated. I mean, we are all used to the vision of money that's a very individual thing, about the money I have in my wallet, but money is a much more complicated thing than that. And if you take the specific debt, historically, debt has been erased on a massive scale. For example, Germany had most of its debt erased at some point, which was a fantastic idea because it actually the economy and made Germany the country it's now today, actually. That's traceable event where it was decided we'll just take that debt away. Because the debt is, you have to think, I mean, of course, just throwing away debt, what does that mean? I mean, it means that somebody has worked in the past and that they're not going to get anything back from that. So somehow there is a, but sometimes the situation means that it's better to just erase the debt. If you go up to, well, we have proceedings to actually erase your debt, but usually there is a high price to pay for this because, of course, the people to whom the debt is owned, they don't like that. So you have to think really about what it means. And yes, you could decide to have a mechanism where it gets erased. You know, you have like a reset button. But would it work? Would people adopt would they come? Or would they just say, no. When I play, I want, because of course you want your erased. You don't want the debt from the other person to be erased. So it's really tricky.
Probably we need to thought, do we allow the technology to change rule during the game? Currently, it's not allowed. Once you have set up the chain, then it runs. And only if, with the current proving mechanisms, you need more than half to adopt the mechanism to change it again, which requires a software update, and all the users have to agree. That's the social rule we currently have. The question is if we should not add more elements where we can change this and volume, whatever, what we would like to change during the cycle of the blockchain. And this, I think, needs to be developed and thought about. The question is which rules. So the rule of some rule who do not have a whole system, who do not reset it zero, like
I'm a European. I really like your question, and we are facing it exactly with what we are working with. And your question is on spot on. Your question is spot on because Ethereum had a fork, Ethereum Classic, when it changed its value proposition. Now, I might agree or agree with this value proposition, but the people, you know,
it was a society, so not everyone agreeing with it, and therefore it was a complete mess. So basically it's crumbling to dust. And I think one of the main point is, you have to stick to your value proposition, because people have to make their decision to in or out. And everyone needs to be educated enough, like to have all the know to understand what is the plan and to understand what are the powers in this is like starting with a constitution. No? It has to be clear, and it has to be very difficult to read afterwards. And what we are doing, for instance, with pilots, we are starting not from the technology, but from the knowledge. So we start with a game. We do a board game, basically, or a role-playing game with real numbers, like how much your community is producing, is consuming. Let's play a game, accelerate over a year. Make sure that everyone understands when we envision an economy, what is going to happen, what is happening, what are the conflicts emerging, who wants to change then the rule, trying to project it. Make sure that everyone's on the same page. This is very important before starting even. And then you have to stick to the rule. A change is very, very dangerous then.
Well, just to reply to Natasha, why is there not any Brussels communities? Well, we would like that there is a stronger community here. For instance, for preparing this exhibition, I think Bram explored all the association and networks here so that we could show something, for instance, from a Brussels Fair Co-op and so on, but it's not yet set up. But I'm sure that maybe with this conference it will help to trigger something substantial here in Brussels.
I don't know, who says what?
It's an all-white male panel, basically.
Yeah. It was initiated by the Larbet sisters, I think. So.
Yeah, that's a panel with men. Probably that's not a coincidence. Men want to invent things, want to rules govern the world, and probably that's also an opportunity to deal with technology. Women rather tend to communicate, be the social glue, and probably have to think this world and integrate that side as well here in our advances in blockchain technology development.
If everyone agrees with that, actually. I think some of the most prominent applications and developers across blockchain are Leanne at 𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤. It's astonishing, and probably an example of both application and deployment in an ethical context as well. I think Ruth at further field is pushing ahead, as we know, so I think it's a misrepresentation, to be honest.
Ruth's film is presented here. Tonight we also have several female speakers. Wow, I think it's a coincidence. Really.